There are two voices inside you. One of them wants you to stay safe, look good, and never get hurt. The other one wants you to become who you actually are, even if it costs you everything. And right now, one of them is winning. The problem is, it might be the wrong one. And you've been calling its voice yourself your entire life. Stay with me, because what I'm about to show you is the single most important psychological war happening inside every human being on Earth. And almost nobody knows the rules of the battle they're already losing. If this is your first time here, welcome to Motivation Thrones, where we decode the psychology nobody else has the courage to explain. Let me tell you something most people will never understand in their entire lifetime. You are not one person. You are two. There is the ego, the version of you built from fear, social conditioning, childhood survival strategies, and everyone else's expectations. The ego is loud. The ego is fast. The ego is the first voice that speaks every single time something happens to you. And there is the soul, the quiet, ancient, unshakable part of you that was here before the world taught you who to be. The soul doesn't shout. It whispers. It doesn't argue. It just knows. Every decision you've ever made was actually made by one of these two. And here's the painful truth. Most people live their entire lives controlled by the ego, while the soul sits in the back of the room, watching, waiting, slowly dying from being unheard. But there's one specific moment in life when the soul finally fights back. And most people experience it as a complete mental breakdown. I'll show you exactly when that happens later in this video. First, you need to understand who you're actually at war with. Let's expose the ego first, because the ego is brilliant at hiding. The ego has 3 signatures. 1. The ego speaks in fear. What will they think? What if I fail? What if I'm not enough? What if I lose everything? If a voice in your head sounds anxious, defensive, or protective, that's the ego. Always. 2. The ego is obsessed with image. How you look, how you sound, how you're perceived. The ego measures your worth based on external validation. Likes, money, status, attention, approval. It cannot exist without an audience. 3. The ego resists change, especially change that threatens its identity. If something feels deeply right but completely terrifying, the ego is the voice telling you to stop. Not because it's wrong, but because it's unfamiliar. The ego isn't evil. The ego built itself to protect you when you were small and powerless. It saved your life as a child. But here's the trap. It doesn't know you grew up. It's still running the survival program from when you were 7 years old. And it will run that program for the next 70 years if you don't catch it. Pause for 1 second. Because most of what you call your personality right now is actually just the ego's defense system. That's not an insult. That's an invitation. Keep watching. Now meet the soul. The part of you the world has been trying to silence since you were born. The soul has 3 opposite signatures. 1. The soul speaks in calm, not excitement, not anxiety, just a quiet, grounded knowing. When you make a decision and your body relaxes, that's the soul. When you make a decision and your body tightens, that's the ego, even if it looks like progress. 2. The soul is indifferent to image. It doesn't care how things look. It only cares how things feel on a level the ego can't access. The soul will lead you into uncomfortable, unpopular, even embarrassing decisions because it knows the long game. 3. The soul welcomes change, especially the kind that breaks who you used to be. The soul doesn't want to keep you safe. The soul wants to make you real. And real is a price tag the ego will never want to pay. Here's the cruel beauty of it. The soul is patient. It will wait years, decades, lifetimes. It doesn't fight the ego head-on. It just keeps whispering the truth in moments of silence. At 3 a.m. when you can't sleep, in the shower, on long drives, after heartbreak. That's when the soul speaks. And that's the voice most people are too afraid to listen to. And now, the moment I promised you. The moment when the soul finally stops whispering and starts screaming. The moment that ruins almost everyone's life before it saves it. There comes a point in nearly every meaningful life when the gap between who you're pretending to be and who you actually are gets too wide to manage. The ego is exhausted from holding the performance together. The soul is exhausted from being ignored. And then, sometimes triggered by a breakup, a death, a betrayal, a job loss, or just an ordinary Tuesday, everything collapses. This is what most people call a mental breakdown. But psychologists who study transformation call it something else. They call it the ego death. The moment your false self can no longer carry the weight of your real self. It feels like the worst thing that ever happened to you. It feels like your life is ending. And in a way, it is. The fake life is ending. Because what's actually happening is your soul is finally winning the war. After years, sometimes decades of being suppressed, it's tearing down the prison the ego built, and the rubble feels like destruction. But it's not destruction. It's demolition before construction. If you've ever lived through a moment in your life where everything broke at once, where the version of you that everyone knew suddenly couldn't exist anymore, that wasn't a breakdown. That was your soul taking the throne. And the only people who fear ego death are the people who've spent their whole life being the ego. So who wins this war? The ego or the soul? Here's the honest answer. In the short term, the ego almost always wins. It's louder. It's faster. It's been running the show longer. Most people die having lived an entire ego-controlled life, surrounded by people, possessions, and achievements that never actually fulfilled them. They mistake noise for life. But in every life where transformation happens, every life where someone truly wakes up, the soul wins. Not by overpowering the ego, but by outlasting it. The soul doesn't need to win every argument. It just needs to win the final one. And here's what no one tells you. Once the soul wins, you stop fighting yourself. The exhausting inner war ends. You don't become fearless or perfect. You just become aligned. Your words match your actions. Your decisions match your truth. The constant background anxiety of pretending finally dissolves. That's not enlightenment. That's just what it feels like to stop lying to yourself. The ego will still be there. It just stops being the boss. So remember this: the ego speaks in fear, lives for image, resists change. The soul speaks in calm, ignores image, welcomes transformation. And every single day, you choose which one runs your life. Most people choose the ego because the soul's path is harder, lonelier, and far more honest than most people are ready for. But if you've made it to the end of this video, if something inside you has been quietly resonating with every word, that's not coincidence. That's your soul recognizing itself in what you just heard. Listen to it. It's been waiting for you. If this video reached something deep inside you, do me one favor. Type the word soul in the comments. I read every single one. Subscribe if you want more truths the world is too afraid to say out loud. And share this with someone whose soul has been quietly screaming for years. You're not broken. You're finally listening.